Carla, could you please take the roll?
Mark Arnold.
Here.
Cody Haney.
Here.
Jeff Helm.
Here.
Marvin Kusick.
Here.
Cole Ream.
Here.
Don Rose. Jim Straight. Richard Werfline.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Carl. I hereby call this regularly scheduled meeting to order. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. First item on the agenda is to consider the approval of the minutes from the February 17th, 2015 regular meeting. You've all had a chance to take a look at those. I will consider a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as read. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
What happens?
I've got number 2. The second item on the agenda is to consider reappointing Cole Ream to the Historic Preservation Commission.
I'm all for that.
Okay. Cole said he's good for it. He's done us a good job. Do I have a motion to reappoint him?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Cole Ream to the Historic Preservation Commission. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And Cole, you have been reappointed.
Yay.
Okay, item number 3 is to consider a land use amendment for Hunt Properties Incorporated for property located at 1505 and 1507 West Owen K. Garriott Road from medium-intensity residential designation to medium-intensity commercial designation. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Right here in the yellow box is the Quinlan Apartments. This is the property being considered tonight for a land use change. The next item is a zoning change from R7 to C3. Currently, this property has sanitary sewer running right through it. It also has it on the north side of Garriott. We do have water service along Garriott, and we have a 5-lane divided highway serving the property. This slide shows you that it currently is medium-intensity residential, and the change is to move it to medium-intensity commercial here. I know the color change is hard to see there. That way, if it's the land use change is approved, then that opens it up to consider the rezoning on the next item. Are there any questions?
What's farm credit of Enid?
They are right here, Commissioner.
I mean, is it the same, your colors look the same as medium intensity
There they are.
residential?
That's a mistake. That's a drafting error. They are zone C3, and it should be medium-intensity commercial. We do have some people signed up to speak on this item. If there's no other questions for staff, I'll yield the podium.
Okay. If there is anyone that wants to speak on this, would you please come to the podium and state your name?
Mike Bighart.
I'm going to wait until the next item on the agenda. We're concerned more about the zoning and what that is. Thank you.
Rob Stallings.
I'm on here to represent Hunt, and I'll answer questions, but I don't have anything on the presentation.
Thank you. Bruce Thomas.
The same item 4, answer questions.
Staff's recommendation is to approve the land use change.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions? Staff recommends we approve. Does anybody have any negative on that? If not, I'll support a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve the land use amendment for Hunt Properties. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 4, pardon my voice, is to consider a rezoning for Hunt Properties for the property located at 1505 and 1507 West Owen K. Garriott Road from R7 Residential Multifamily District to C3 General Commercial District. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This slide shows the same aerial photo. It shows the site outlined in yellow. The current zoning is R7. They are seeking C3 zoning in their application. They indicated they would build restaurants and retail uses. We have received a protest on this particular zoning request. The area being rezoned is illustrated here in blue, and the area mapped out that is protesting is detailed in yellow, and we are concerned about the property that's within 300 feet. And the protest comes to almost 42%. So it falls below that threshold of 50% that you would not have to be concerned about as the planning commission. But if that protest gets to 50 or greater, by the time it goes to the city commission, then that means something. It would require a majority, a supermajority of the city commission versus a simple majority. So that's the reason the percentage is important for tonight. It does not have any bearing. Are there any questions about the rezoning or the protest map that's in front of you that I can answer?
Chris, could you review the difference between C1 and C3? Since I noticed some of the commercial buildings surrounding this are, I think to the north is C1, to the west is C3. I just curious.
Sure. C3 is my general retail commercial district that you see, that we basically go to when we shop for whatever goods and services that we're after. C1 is light commercial, and it's more administrative, professional offices, dentists, lawyer offices, things of that nature. It's a lesser intense commercial district. Any other questions?
When's the final date for the protest to be in?
They are always due 3 days prior to a hearing. So on this one, the hearing was today at 6 p.m. So it was due in my office on Wednesday by 6 p.m. And we received it in the middle of the afternoon last Wednesday, ahead of the deadline.
This number's not gonna change by the time it gets to commission.
It can, yes, it can. They can submit, the law allows them to submit a protest 3 days ahead of any public hearing. So that's another public hearing in front of the city commission. So it may grow, Commissioner.
Submitted, they were aware of 42%, or were they made aware of that percentage?
The petition came to us from Attorney Mike Bighart, and he's representing everybody that you see there in yellow. So we shared that percentage with Mike, and I don't know if he shared it with his clients or not.
When was it shared?
I-
When did you share that?
I had an early version of the protest as early as Friday, but we spotted some errors, and I thought it was going to shrink, and I advised Mike of that, and sure enough, it did. On Friday, we thought it was like 43.5%, and it came in a little bit less than, because we had a mapping error. And I know Mike signed up to speak on this item, so he can probably answer that question. Are there any other questions for staff?
I believe so, Chris.
Thank you. The first person signed up is Mike Bighart.
Thank you. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I represent, could we throw the map up with the protest map up again, please?
Yes. Right there. Do you need to
Again.
point to it?
Well, no, I'm fine. Everybody can see that. I represent the property owners who are covered in the yellow. And I can go through and name those, but I'm not going to do that because of the numbers. I represent World Petroleum Corporation. I represent the Farm Credit Bank of England. I represent Kobe Inc., which is the far west property. I represent Clark Young and his wife, which is number 4, and there's a large residential site. Again, represent Dr. The number of the people right now represent approximately 42% of the surrounding property owners. By the time we get to the city commission hearing in May, I anticipate we'll represent a substantial number of the others that we just haven't spoken to yet, but I anticipate we'll be well over 50% by then. In any case, the concerns that my clients have are two things. The congestion and compatibility. It's already, as all of us know, a busy street, and very busy street. And the very first factor in the statute that governs these kind of land use changes deals with lessening congestion on the streets or in the streets. In fact, let me read that just real quickly. It's a short statute, and I'll just read part of it. But Title 11, Section 43-103 reads, municipal regulations as to buildings, structures, and land shall be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan and designed to accomplish any of the following objectives. And number one is to lessen congestion in the streets. And that's like I said, that's the first concern, the primary concern we've got. Now, I'm going to show just a real little short, it's a 59-second video that I took at about 4:45 today, standing on the street in front of, well, not on the street, on the curb, in front of the Farm Credit Bank. Again, right on the right was the property there. This is at 4:45 in the afternoon. I do not know if this is typical. I do not know if it's heavy. I don't know if it's light. I just know it was 4:45 today. Like I said, I don't know if that's typical. I don't know if it's what it's actually like there when work gets off at 5. Again, it's a very busy street. It's very busy from 7 to 9 in the morning when everyone's on their way to work. Extremely busy over the lunch hour, and busy from 5 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon when people get off work. And my clients tell me that at times it's extremely difficult to get onto the street, much less make a left-hand turn. Now, restaurant and retail use will only make an existing problem worse. Instead of just having this traffic congested at peak hours, we're going to have a continual ingo and outflow, ingress, egress from that particular property, which is only going to complicate the system, the situation that we have now. Now, traffic control then becomes complicated. We have signal lights in the area. We have signal lights at Van Buren and Owen-K. Garriott to the east. We have a divided street or divided road past Taylor, almost to the Ward property, past Taylor Street to the up in the northeast corner there. And like I said, almost to the Ward property, it's a divided street. It's not really practical. Well, and then we've got a stoplight down at Johnson too. And it's not really to the west. It's not practical for us to go in and install additional signal lights. To do so basically would bring traffic to almost a halt through that area there. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a situation here where we can add access roads like we've got out further west on Owen-K. Garriott, and like we see in other towns where they have a concentration of retail and restaurant type properties. Those are very effective, but we don't have that ability to do that here with the light commercial properties that are around it and with the residential properties that are around it. Anyway, what we're really being asked to do, or what the MAPC is being asked to do, is to take what is presently a difficult situation from a traffic standpoint and to make it worse by changing zoning and allowing restaurant and retail use. Now, that's the congestion problem. We also have a problem with the conformity of the use of the property. A good portion of the surrounding areas, you can tell, a good portion of the property is residential property. The Ward property is office property. It's zoned C1. The land bank is also office property. It has a C3 zoning to it, but it clearly has a C1 use. It's light commercial, as is the property immediately to the west of the land bank, which is Kobe Inc., and then the property actually next to the west of it too, which is not within the 300 feet. And then we have some heavier commercial property on further west. But in the immediate vicinity of this, the particular use of the property as a restaurant and retail just wouldn't be compatible with the surrounding area. What compounds this even more so is not knowing what kind of restaurant and retail we're talking about. That makes a big difference on the traffic, obviously, that we can anticipate. Now, you know, if we're talking about a drive-through or a drive-in, well, I love all those places, but it's probably, not probably, but definitely not consistent with the surrounding areas. And again, if it's drive-through, drive-in, that sort of thing, you've got the ingress and egress problems that we talked about before. So on behalf of those particular property owners that I represent, I would urge the MAPC to deny the requested rezoning at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bighart.
Rob Stallings?
I'll be very brief. The Hunt property folks are interested in probably putting a restaurant there. They haven't told us exactly what type, or they haven't told me exactly what type of restaurant it's going to be. But it would seem to me that O&K Garrett is the place that you want to put a restaurant. There's a C3 zoning next door. It just seems like it's kind of a logical place to do this. And I kind of sat back there and chuckled for a second as I saw the video. I sat up here on the city council in '88, and what we would have given back in 1988 to see traffic on O&K Garrett.
Bruce Thomas?
My name is Bruce Thomas. I'm a real estate broker for Landmark here in Enid. I live at 1517 Bonita Avenue, which is about 580 feet south of Windland Apartments. In doing a little research, Windland Apartments was built in about 1948. At that time, it fronted on a two-lane road called Lahoma Road. You'll have to guess where that took you. 67 years later, the same property now fronts on a 5-lane U.S. highway. We call it O&K Garrett, which is really the commercial corridor for Enid, Oklahoma. Back in 1948, the highest and best use for that property was probably residential multifamily. But things have changed. The traffic has changed. But the traffic is what it is. Now, true, there's going to be additional traffic, but it's already where investors want to go. Restaurants, retail, they want to go where the traffic is. They don't want to go out in the country and expect people to come to them. So that's why O&K Garrett is so sought after. Now, Hunt Properties is paying a premium price for this quality property. They can't afford to let something less than extremely nice go in there. This is not a cheap project. So things have changed. The highest and best use, I think, is C3, general commercial, and I hope to see it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes everyone that signed up.
Mr. Bauer, Chairman, can I add one thing?
Go ahead, sir.
I should have said this when I was speaking. We don't have.
You have to come to the mic.
Please come up to the microphone.
My clients do not have a problem with C1 zoning in this particular area, which would be the light commercial. It's the C3 and just making it wide open, they've got the problem without knowing more than we know now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bighart.
Excuse me, can I say one word additional?
Only if you come up to the microphone.
Real quick.
Quick.
The farm credit is zone C3, and that extends all the way west. Across the street is Ward Petroleum Zone C1. Even Ward Petroleum is bookend on the east and on the west, just 2 blocks away with C3 zoning. So they are an anomaly zoning wise. So why this This is what it is.
All right, Commissioner, do you have any other questions for any of the personnel? Richard? Guys on that end? I'll entertain a motion.
There's problems regardless, but if that's the zoning for it, that's the zoning for it.
What's that?
I mean, this is gonna create egress problems, we know that.
Who's gonna, Gary Road has egress.
That's right.
But we know that's the nature of the beast out there.
You also know that those are one-lane only roads into those apartments. So if you ever get behind somebody trying to turn in there with a big pickup, that creates an egress problem.
Whatever site plan they come up with, I would trust would have a decel lane built in and something, or maybe not, depending on what's.
That's going to have to be addressed with the site plan.
It's gonna be in the site plan.
Right.
My feeling is as ugly as it is what it is.
I agree.
We can make a lot of improvements and decisions during the site plan.
Yes.
This talks about is improving Garrett.
Improving here. Well,
Okay.
and once again.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve and a motion to, and a second, excuse me. The motion is made and seconded for the rezoning of Hunt properties located at 1505 and 1507 West Owen K. Garriott to C3 General Commercial District. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
I have one nay. That motion carries.
Turn on. So, put more stuff on it, I guess.
They'll be over.
Okay, item number 5 is to consider a land use amendment for Lance Wendell for property located at the southwest corner of Oakwood and Purdue from medium-intensity commercial designation to low-intensity residential designation.
Thank you, Mr.
Chris.
Chairman. This is in the northwest part of our community. This slide shows you the site outlined in yellow. It's almost 2 acres. It's not a very big piece of land. You can see that we have a 12-inch water line in Oakwood. We have 16-inch water line in Purdue. The developer is extending sewer. It's there. It can be advanced to the site. We have roads. It's our opinion that it's appropriate to change the land use. In our current comprehensive plan, they refer to this intersection as a neighborhood commercial node. It was to be a small commercial serving the surrounding neighborhood. This is the area. It's already been, this much of the node, already low-intensity residential. And tonight's action request would change that little brown box to yellow and lower that land use from medium intensity to low-intensity residential. Are there any questions?
We changed the rest of that to residential here a while back with that housing development, correct? The one just to the south of this?
You're talking about right here, Commissioner?
Yes,
This is
what-
Terra Estates,
Yeah, didn't they just,
and he's carrying forward houses here in all of this. The rezoning, he's gonna build houses on that corner as well.
okay, so it'll,
Right. The rezoning will be the companion item after this one.
Any questions?
So is this a separate owner, or are we talking about
It's the same owner.
the same guy that we've already rezoned the rest of it?
Yes, Lance
Okay.
Wendell, yes.
Any other questions? Motion?
wait,
That's okay, Carla. She's told me what she.
Okay.
I'll motion to approve.
Oh, okay. I have a motion to approve?
Sorry.
Make a second.
And I have a second. The motion is made to consider the land use amendment for the southwest corner of Oakwood and, am I on the right one? Yes, I am. I'm sorry, sir.
Item number 5.
Item number 5. Okay, we've made the motion to change the designation from medium-intensity commercial to low-intensity residential designation. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 6 is to consider a rezoning for Lance Wendell for property located at the southwest corner of Oakwood and Purdue from agricultural district to R2 residential, single-family district. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The same yellow box there, you can see currently it's zoned agricultural. This request is to change that to R2 to match the rest of his development. I anticipate we'll see a plat of how many lots he proposes to put in there in the near future. It's recommended for approval.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning for this same lot that we were talking about. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Item number 7 is to consider a rezoning for Greeks LLC for property located in the 5,000 block of East Owen K. Garriott from I-1 Planned Industrial Park District to I-2 Light Industrial District. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There, unlike the two previous rezonings that you heard this evening, there is no land use change involved here. It's already heavy intensity industrial. The site is, to orient you, this is 54th Street. This is 412. Right here is where FedEx is building their new facility, to orient you. This road is limited access off of 412, has been here for a long, long time. This used to be owned by Jack Davis. They are wanting to rezone this. My next slide will probably help you. He's already I-3 here. It's currently I-1. They are seeking I-2 because the company that's considering purchasing this property is in the oil service industry, and I-2 is the appropriate land use rezoning for that particular use. So we have water and sewer in the area. We have limited access to 412. It's recommended for approval.
Mr. Chairman, because of my involvement, I'm going to step out for official discussion. and
Thank you.
There's nobody signed up to speak on this item.
Okay. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning for that area of East Owen K. Garriott. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Item number 8 is to consider a use by review for Jeremiah Harrion for property located at 1714 South 4th to provide temporary emergency housing.
Thank you,
Chris?
Mr. Chairman. It wasn't too long ago that we worked with Forgotten Ministries and helped them secure C1 zoning here. This is right across the street from New View Apartments. They have built their facility there. They are operating their ministry there, and they have come to the city and have recognized that there's a great need for homeless people to have a place to go when there's extreme weather. And that's defined in their proposal to the city is when it gets to like 32 degrees. And while C1 does not permit this by right, there is the language in the C1 zoning ordinance that we can consider it under use by review. And I give you the criteria there in the second paragraph of my background to you. We don't see any additional parking here because by the nature of the people that they're wanting to take care of are homeless. They do not have a car or may not have a car. We anticipate that they don't, and so requiring parking that won't be a car on, we didn't think was necessary. There is adequate parking on the existing facility. Should there be a homeless person that does have a car and needs to park, we think we can take care of that. The proposed use will not create any noxious or offensive emissions to the surrounding neighborhood, will not include any noise, glare, or smoke or dust. It's staff's recommendation to approve.
Chris? Commissioners, any questions?
Any protests on this, Chris?
No, there's not, but I have two people signed up to speak on it. Jeremiah Heron is the first speaker.
All right, well, thank you guys for letting us share with you. For you guys that don't know kind of the situation that we have in Enid, Enid has around 400 couch homeless, which are people that transition from house to house or squatting into abandoned houses. And we have somewhere in the vicinity, probably around 40 people that are sleeping on the streets. Now, you would never see them because those people are well hidden. And they hide behind church signs, behind bushes, on the railroad track. Many of the homeless actually live in this housing addition or this area. It would be along the railroad track. And so our desire is just to be able to, help these people when the weather gets extreme, to be able to have a bed for them to come in, to check in, and that we would be able to have a separate women's area, a men's area, a hall monitor that would be to keep it secure and safe. So that we don't allow anything come in or out that would be dangerous, and transportation to help get the people over to Our Daily Bread, over to this facility and back over to Our Daily Bread so that they have a place to eat. And so ultimately the goal from having this option or this opportunity to be able to get into these people's lives is eventually be able to offer the skills that they need in this facility to help them change the cycle that they're in. So be able to offer the money management and the job training and the skills they need to eventually become not homeless. That's the desire that we have. But as any of us, I've heard it said that we're one paycheck away from being homeless. And many of these people have just made one bad decision and have ended up where they are, not by choice, but sometimes by the choices that they've made. And for the most part, many of these people want to turn their life around. And so we want to be able to be a place that offers that opportunity, help them turn their life around by walking through this part of their life. And so I believe the facility is going to be well managed. It's going to be kept well clean. And we plan on working with many different agencies and ministries in Enid to help make this facility run the best that we can for using it for this situation. So thank you, guys.
Sarah Heron? That concludes the people signed up to speak.
Commissioners, any questions?
I would have one quick question for Jeremiah. I'm assuming that there's some oversight probably done by DHS or the health department, or is there anybody that will be a checks and balances system for this?
Yeah, so when they come to the facility, we'll have hired staff that will be there to check the men and women into their separate facilities. And we'll have a separate locker system that makes sure they check their stuff so they're not bringing in, let's say, a weapon or drugs or anything like that, so that's separate from the room. And then that will be monitored all night long while they're there. And all of our exterior doors will have alarms on it, so if anyone happens to try to go out or bring someone in, we will know about that by the people that are there all night long.
Is there any governmental, local, state, and federal agencies that will check your facility and make sure it's a...
Oh, okay.
I was just curious about who checks compliance.
Yeah, the health department will definitely check because we'll have a full kitchen there. So they'll be coming in and checking on a regular basis. Other than that, it'll be just churches and ministries that will help keep the beds from obviously getting bed bugs. We'll have a washing system there on site. So when they get done at night, they'll bring their sheets into the center to where we wash them at the location and, kind of keep that changing out every day. So we try to keep it as healthy, as sanitary as possible.
How
Any
many beds are you looking to?
We're looking, I think we can house up to 35 to 40, 20 in each room is what we're looking at. And I think that'll be more than efficient. Every once in a while you run into a person that, can't afford their gas bill in the winter. And so I presume that we'll probably have some families in the winter that, once this is an option, that, hey, let's go stay at the shelter instead of sit here in our house and freeze to death. And that's part of the problem. We've had people in the past that have actually died from living out on the streets or living in their cars. And so having this opportunity is going to be a way to help protect a lot of the, people that live in Enid. Any other questions?
Have you discussed this? Have you visited the surrounding community and talked to the people about it?
Oh, yeah. We're in good relationship with all the community and the apartment owner, and even though that just changed. But the surrounding properties that are around there, they know what's going on and are pretty supportive of it, for sure. It's kind of become a community center, so a lot of, once we're open, being able to have like kids programs and different things to help, give to the community and using the facility to go out and renovate the homes that are needed to be renovated. The community's really kind of been open arms to embracing what's coming in.
You mentioned the extreme weather, it's not just.
Yeah, and this is it's just temporary. So, like now we would be closed, but the last month when it's been, freezing rain and snow, and those are the conditions that we really want to have our doors open. But this isn't something we do not want to turn into a homeless shelter. That is not in our plan, nor do we ever want to become that. But in these situations, we think that it's necessary for these people that need help.
So my question was for Chris. You've got, this one's tagged use by review.
Yes, sir.
To what extent were you planning on reviewing, or was that going to be left open?
That's a good question, and to answer that, the criteria in my background in the second paragraph is the criteria we use to determine if the Planning Commission wants to grant that use by review. So we looked, does it need additional parking? We at staff level think not, because of the clients that's going to be served. We don't think inside the facility there's going to be any noxious or offensive emissions, noise, or glare. So if the use were to rise and object to one of those criteria, then our recommendation would be to deny, but we don't see that.
So actually, it would not be reviewed then? You don't have a
No,
timetable?
this, use by review comes before this body. It is your determination.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take a motion. I have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now, I understand, Chris, if you would talk about the next 4 items, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a dilemma, the same dilemma I had last month. We cannot discuss item number 9, item number 10, 11, or 12. All 4 of those are before you tonight to discuss a sidewalk variance to the city ordinance. And the criteria that I'm directed from the city attorney's office to review that with comes out of our subdivision regulations. And if you'll go to item number 9 in my background, do you see number 4 there at the bottom? It says that 3/4 of this body has to be in agreement before the variance can proceed to the city commission, who will ultimately make the decision to approve or deny. Tonight, I only have 6 seating planning commissioners. Don Rose was making every attempt to be here. He thought at best he would be iffy, probably wouldn't. We're at that point in the meeting, he's not here. My recommendation is we move these to next month, and maybe then we'll have 7 members.
2 of these from last month.
Yes, sir. The good news is we continue to issue the permit. We're not delaying anybody's construction. This issue just needs to be resolved before they're ready to do a certificate of occupancy. I wish we could take care of the business tonight, because there are people in this room that were ready to answer your questions, and they won't have that opportunity because we don't have that many commissioners.
Okay, with that being said, we will strike items 9, 10, 11, and 12, and move on to item 13, which is to receive the final draft of the Envision Enid Comprehensive Plan and conduct a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce our consultant from Guernsey. Carl Stickley is working his way up here. The rest of the people in the room are the public that came to hear this presentation. And what Carl's going to do is give you about a 20-minute presentation? Less, yeah. A little less. And then we're going to open it up for public comment. So please welcome Carl.
Thank you. We are here to bring to you the public hearing portion of the Enid, Envision Enid, the comprehensive plan, transportation plan for the city of Enid. What I've done tonight is to hide a lot of the slides that were used in the public meeting, because the public meeting presentation was a lot longer, and try to get to the specifics of what we were recommending for the city of Enid. This is just a draft. It is a draft in which changes have been made since the initial draft for the public meeting took into account at least some of the comments made during the public meeting process. There's still some things that would need to be worked out. Gerald has asked us to consider some issues, how we format some of these issues, and I'll speak to that here in a minute. And some of the other, but some of this will have to, of course, go back to the City Council, who is our ultimate employer on this. And so tonight we're presenting those portions of the plan that we think are germane to this hearing. We're going to talk about an introduction. We're going to talk about what we call the big ideas. This is a little bit different kind of comprehensive plan that you've had in the past. We're going to focus on these big ideas. The genesis of this is to try to obtain stakeholders who will agree to implement the plan. Number two, it's intended to be a living document. So as we go through and there are people that come on board and say, I want to work on that particular piece of this plan, they would be added to that plan. So this isn't some static thing. It's intended to be printed out and put on the shelf. It's intended to be a living document. And that was one of the directions that we got from the City Council. Talk a little bit about the transportation plan and where we are with that. Of course, some of the transportation plan issues are a little bit have been hard for us to get a handle on because of some of the big ideas and what those big ideas do to the transportation plan, but I'll present to you a snapshot of the transportation plan, and then talk a little bit about the future land use and some of the zoning changes that we feel need to be made in Enid. So let me talk a little bit about, on an introduction basis, a comprehensive plan is supposed to be a very high-level, overarching policy for the city to follow. We want to talk about the community's goals, the aspirations, and it's used for decision-making. So it's a tool to be used for decision-making. It is not intended to be the actual blueprint of exactly what you do, but a more high-level process by which you get to what you will end up doing in terms of hard construction or zoning decisions that need to be made or those types of things that would come later with the implementation of the plan. Start with the vision of the community goals. We go into these big ideas in the future land use plan, and then we talk about some of the strategic initiatives that are necessary to accomplish those big ideas. Under community goals, in the initial part of this, we heard 5 things very loudly from people. That included from stakeholders, from the council. We had various outreach efforts for the public, both in person and what we call the Mind Mixer site. I hope that you at least had a chance to look at the Mind Mixer site. And these are those 5 things that came across. One is to have strategic growth. To make sure that we're making optimum use of our current infrastructure and the land that we have within the boundaries of the city of Enid. Second was the economy. How can we leverage our existing strengths and invest in diversification and workforce development? Third was mobility. How do we move people and goods around, including pedestrians, cyclists, cars, the whole gamut of mobility? Water has been a very critical issue. Without water, some of these issues, particularly industrial development and some other things, will suffer. And so a sufficient water supply became very apparent right up front. And then the quality of life. So those are the 5 community goals that surfaced early on in this process. So let's look at those big ideas. There were 6 of them. We've been discussing whether or not to add a 7th one. Need to have some dialogue about that. Let me give you the idea of the first of the 6 big ideas. The enhanced downtown, a regional retail destination is number 2, an East Side creative hub, number 3, number 4 is the green network, number 5 is model neighborhoods, and number 6 is industrial growth. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about each of those of the big ideas. Enhancing downtown. We came up with 9 different strategic initiatives that we felt would help in enhancing downtown. We want to enhance the retail environment of downtown. Want to look at incorporating residential into downtown to make it a mixed-use district. Number 3 was to pursue the strategic infill opportunities. There are areas in downtown where we feel that infill would be appropriate. Number 4 is to improve the downtown parking systems. Perhaps looking at some co-located parking areas as opposed to each business having their own parking as an example. Number 6 would be to showcase the downtown as the civic heart of the community. You've done a great deal of effort, put in a great deal of effort over the last number of years to make it the civic heart of the community, and we want to make sure that we enhance that. Number 7 is to support the creative and innovative businesses, strengthen downtown and the regional economy. Number 8 is to establish the downtown as a hub for recreation and amenities. And number 9 is to improve connectivity and use of complete streets. Complete streets are where we take into account all the modes of transportation, people that want to drive as well as people who want to walk and use their bicycles, and make it an inviting environment for all. So just some slides that capture in this shortened presentation some of the issues that we saw when we looked at Enid. This slide portrays where the residential housing is for Enid. And that big red circle around there is the downtown area. And as you can see by this graphic, there's very few residential opportunities for those that want to live downtown, and particularly those that want to live and work downtown at the same time, which is getting to be around the country a way that a lot of people, particularly younger people, want to live. And we thought that this would be a good idea to at least talk about this idea of having residential downtown where there currently is very little. For infill, we showed some areas, these 4 key areas that we feel are ripe for infill development because of their relationship to other things. If we look along O&K Garriott, you see the idea of being visible to downtown, whether that's a structure, whether that's not a structure would have to be determined, but having downtown visible as a gateway into downtown from Garriott. To the west of your convention hall, we have some area that we feel could be, right now it's parking lot, that we feel could be further developed as a support to convention hall. We have taken the liberty of showing the hotel just to the north of the Civic Center and Convention Hall. The third area would be in the north side of downtown, where we feel there's an opportunity to infill with perhaps residential development in that area, which is the area just north of downtown, and then to the northeast of downtown, the potential to capture some additional areas for managed parking and things like that. These areas that are in the light orange colors are open areas that many of them would remain parking, but the question is, can we capture some of them for managed parking or other uses? We're not trying to dictate which properties would be used for which use, just giving some ideas of how this would look. And then gateways into downtown so that you know when you're entering downtown. We've shown gateways, for instance, along Main, along Broadway, and along Randolph. And a little bit, I'll touch on the Broadway and Main conundrum, because we do have a little bit of conundrum there to still work. The city still needs to work out between Main and Broadway. On the north end, on Grand, another entryway, and then on the south end, the entryway is coming off of Garriott and coming into downtown on Independence and on Grand, to give a sense of place, to give a location where people can come and have a sense of place. This is our civic spine. It's already basically created for us, and the question is, on the south side between Convention Hall and Garriott, what becomes of that space? What of that do we want to try to capture for public use? Some communities do an amphitheater or some other type of semi-permanent or permanent stage area. Some communities have chosen to do a recreational facility, particularly for families to come down to the downtown area and have some outdoor recreation opportunities. There's a space there. Part of that is in the floodplain, and so it can't really be developed for anything else, but we feel it would be a great location for some sort of community facility, particularly with an outdoor attraction. And this is the kind of thing that it could look like, integrated in with the trail system. That dashed line might represent a trail system coming through there and connecting back out to the rest of Enid. And we'll talk about the trail system here in a moment when we get to the green network. But just an idea of what this place could become and what other communities have done with this place. So when we put it all together, we come up with a map that looks like this. We've identified those areas where we feel that there should be consideration for infill, those areas that are gateway areas, those areas that could be perhaps used for a public purpose, such as a park area, some sort of permanent or semi-permanent structure in that area. Those are some of the kinds of things that this plan brings forward as potential for enhancing downtown. On the regional retail destination, a lot of talk about this. Part of it centers around what we call the sales gap. When we look at how much sales tax and how much sales would we expect from the people that are in the area of Enid and surrounding Enid, and what is actually being spent. Now, I want to give a little caveat to this because you already have, as the City of Enid, a retail development firm that's helping you, Retail Attractions LLC. We were charged by the City Council to specifically not use their data, to develop some data of our own that we could then compare to their data and see if we had similar numbers. Now, we know that the area around Enid has trade areas. We have the primary trade area, which both ourselves and Retail Attractions considers to be Garfield County. We have a secondary trade area that extends out farther from Garfield County, captures about 100,000 or so people, a larger area. And then beyond that is the tertiary area, which actually goes into the Oklahoma Panhandle, goes as far east as Ponca City. When we looked at those areas, it's difficult to determine exactly what percentage of sales are coming from each, and that's why you've hired Retail Attractions. They've come up with a methodology to determine what kind of sales you're getting from that secondary area, and if you look at their material, and some of this will be in the final report, we're working with them right now. We've been discussing with them how to integrate their stuff into our report that will show what types of attractions you get, what kind of sales you get from these areas in the secondary, the primary, and the secondary area. I will tell you that all of us believe in the tertiary area. While we get some people that will come from the Panhandle or from as far away as Ponca City and come in, the primary use of that tertiary area is for medical purposes. We don't count a whole lot on retail sales for that area, and that's the data that Retail Attractions can show you as well. So we used the primary trade area of Garfield County as a comparison to look back on what Retail Attractions had done when they counted primary and secondary. And it's amazing how close the results are, which indicates to us that the sales that we have are mostly generated from Garfield County with truly a secondary effect from the surrounding area, and we'll have in the report some documentation on that effect. But this chart right here represents, if we just look at Garfield County and we just look at the potential retail sales, which is the blue line, and we look at the actual sales based on sales tax revenue, that's the orange line, and we can see that gap. And that's true whether we look at just this primary area or if we look at the secondary area as well. We looked at the distribution of the existing retail supply. You can see a concentration of it in the downtown area. You can see a concentration of it out on West Garriott, and then scattered throughout the town, you can see other, scattered around Enid, you can see other single point nodes or intersections that have retail sales. We looked at the analysis of what does this all mean to us. We can see that the population is growing. At least that's been the trend over the last 10 to 20 years. We know that back in the 80s we had the big drop-off in population, but since then it's stabilized and has continued to grow. We know that per capita income has continued to grow. So we'd expect to have, with a higher per capita income, we would expect to have the potential for more retail sales. So if we just look at the Garfield County residents, just only the Garfield County residents, we see that there's about $100 million in retail sales that could be made in Enid that are not being made today, and it gets a little bit worse, about 20% worse, when we consider the secondary trade area, this slightly larger area. So we are not capturing all of the sales that we could have in Enid. Now, we have better than expected. If you just looked at Garfield County, you just put on blinders and said, I only want to look at Garfield County, and you looked at general merchandise, building materials, health, personal care, those things, we do get more sales than just what you would just expect for Garfield County. But in these other categories, clothing, electronics, furniture, dining, those sectors, we don't do as well just even considering Garfield County as what should be done. In addition, we've looked at the retail space. Now, this I've got to be very careful about because there's a lot of controversy about what we consider to be a vacant retail space. Does that mean the building is vacant? No, it does not. When we look at retail space, is this a space that looks like it should be retail, it's zoned retail, has storefronts, is in an area where we have a high traffic for drive-by shopping, those kinds of things, if it looks like it should be retail, and we say, okay, that's a retail space, then compare that against its actual use. So probably vacant is not a good term. We've probably messed up using that term. Probably something more like underutilized when we're talking about a retail space, because retail means you're generating sales tax. we usually allow about 15% of non-retail sales within, say, a shopping center. That would be a tax preparer or a nail salon or something like that, something you're not getting the sales tax from, but you still have it there. We usually figure that about 15%. So even accounting for that, we see that Enid has a little over 1 million square foot too much of retail space at this time if we use that definition. So we've looked at some strategies that we'd recommend for the retail, building on existing assets. You've got a lot of infrastructure in place, roads, sewer, water main, drainage that is already there, building on those existing assets. Creating desirable destinations, retail areas where people want to come, fostering some additional partnerships for redevelopment. We've got a section on that. Establishing a framework for incremental improvements. We know this isn't going to happen all at once, but establishing a framework for incremental improvements. Supporting destinations with strategic infrastructure, looking at the destinations for diverse uses, and repositioning uses outside of the destinations to align with future demand. So those are some of the strategic initiatives that are in this plan, and within each of these initiatives, there are various recommendations on how to implement these initiatives. So when we look at the retail area, and some people have appreciated this kind of slide, we look at the mall there and the area on Garriott going out to the Walmart to the west, and we look at how much area is there and what could you put in that area, just to give us some context. So and this means nothing other than trying to give you a flavor of how much space this really is. If we took all of downtown Enid and put it on top of the mall, that's what it would look like. We could add in all of Bricktown in Oklahoma City in this same area. We could add in Kansas City's Country Club Plaza. You can see the kind of retail space that could be available just in this area from the mall out to the Walmart. Third big idea is the East Side Creative Hub. To strengthen the partnerships with the colleges, to leverage creative energy for economic development, to foster solutions that connect economic development. I'm not going to read all of this. Well, yes, maybe I do because of the television audience. Chris, please give me some guidance.
Sure.
Okay. To transform Broadway. Now, Broadway's a little bit of an issue. Do we do Broadway or do we do Main? The Broadway is the traditional streetcar line. We've got some older buildings on Broadway, lend themselves really well to some nodes where the old streetcar stops used to be. That's why those buildings, those commercial buildings are there. But what's the one thing that Broadway doesn't have? It doesn't have an underpass or overpass to get around the railroad tracks, which Main does have. And so we've landed on Broadway, but we very, very clearly recognize that Main has a lot of attributes. Some of those same attributes can be found on Main as are found on Broadway. We've landed on Broadway because of the historic destinations and some of the retail shops there, but that would be something that could be explored. Utilizing those underutilized buildings, again, if we use the Broadway corridor, there's a few more of those. Encourage development of amenities around the campus, and connect the East Enid neighborhoods to the Broadway corridor with a supportive infrastructure that would include walkability. So that looks like, graphically, to use Broadway to connect the downtown with the campus areas, Northern Oklahoma College and Northwest Oklahoma State, and build on some of those existing assets that are along that corridor. And so if we use Broadway, it would look like this, with a couple of nodes where the old streetcar stops used to be, downtown on the west, and the campus areas on the east, and develop a walkable area, still could allow for vehicular transportation, but also make it more amenable for people that want to walk, that want to ride their bikes, that want to connect the campus into downtown. We were asked to look at the green network. The caveat on this is that we were asked to take the 2009 Trails Master Plan and prioritize the development of that master plan. So this is your 2009 Trails Master Plan. You can see all of the trails that go to serving various parts of Enid, and we were asked to prioritize those. So when we looked at that, we wanted to look at the greatest opportunities for pedestrian and bicycle access to schools, parks, and businesses, to promote opportunities for easy accessibility to recreation and fitness, to protect resources such as floodplains and other areas, and then to capitalize on transportation and recreation benefits in the local economy. So here's where we've started from. The green represents those trails that are already in place. Here and here. The red represents what we would recommend as the priority improvements. You will notice that Broadway is one of those red because it ties into our third big idea. So part of Broadway, which we would develop as a complete streets type of thing, so you'd still have automobiles, but it would be enhanced the walkability and rideability there. And the rest of the red are the priority number 1. Then the blue are the priority number 2. And the reason for the blue is to try to form some connections. Chris Bauer tells us that when he gets out to run, he runs on the trail and runs to one end and he stops and he runs back the other way. And what we'd like to do is to make some connectivity, so we're connecting around the city. And so the red, one of the things of the blue is to provide some circular routes around the city, and then also, just as importantly, we've recommended that we bring the trail down to Vance Air Force Base, which in the original plan was a much future trail, and bring that up more into the present. And that's the trail that you see coming here. And that's one of the changes that we've made since the public hearing, the public meeting. And we really like the gateway nodes that you're developing in town. We encourage you to keep using that and keep with the trail standard that you have right now. It's a very good trail standard, one of the best that we have seen. Model neighborhoods, we've looked at the future of housing. Now again, you have a consultant, CDS, that has come in and done housing studies. In fact, they are starting to do a study that I believe will be done by July. Gerald, is that correct? The June or July, another look at, and we've been talking to them. Our numbers that we came up with are very similar. One of the takeaways of this is that housing numbers are almost always based on the county, because the assumption is that if there is available housing just outside the city limits, or even 5 or 10 miles outside the city limits, people will buy that home and drive to town, and that's not too much of a hardship. So most of these are based on the county. We have talked to CDS about the possibility of them breaking out some of the citywide data to try to get a feel for where this housing occurs, because we're still showing that no matter whose numbers we use, we have around 8.5% vacancy in Garfield County. And the question is, how much of that is way outside of Enid? It's in areas in which it's not housing that anyone wants to live in. What's the actual Enid specifics on this? And we've asked that CDS at least consider that. Now, I don't know what the city will do, but we recommend that CDS consider the Enid area as well as the county area in their next study. So we looked at the population that's growing. We looked at the vacant housing study. We've got a little bit of difference between our numbers and CDS. Personally, after talking with CDS, I'm going to revise ours to match theirs a little bit. I think your vacancy is probably in the neighborhood of countywide, about 8.5% on a countywide basis. Got strong household demand. And then, but the other thing, and both ourselves and CDS are saying this, is that there's not a whole lot of housing choices today. And that involves not only not a whole lot of single-family homes, but also a dearth of attached and multifamily units that we feel would be very beneficial for Enid to have, particularly for industrial development, for Vance Air Force Base, and other places where we feel that that would be a very attractive thing for people coming into the Enid area. So we've done a number of initiatives to ensure that new neighborhoods have a diversity of housing choices, price, and lifestyle options, to improve the neighborhood connectivity, to encourage amenity-rich neighborhood centers. Amenity-rich neighborhood centers, this would be centers at the intersection of major streets, but pull them together a little bit so people can walk from one to another. And you don't have to get back in your car just to go to the store on the other side of the street, maybe put the parking in the back. Develop a little bit different type of neighborhood center. Coordinate the development, infrastructure, and services, of course, and stabilize and enhance existing neighborhoods. So these are some examples these are photographs taken in other communities of some kinds of housing that have been developed, the multifamily, the attached housing, that have proven to be quite popular in other areas, particularly when you have younger families. Industrial growth. A couple of kind of industries. Let's talk about the industries in Enid to start with. Vance Air Force Base is a big industry for Enid. You have a lot of agricultural-related businesses. And so we wanted to look at those things in which are going to be important to those, and then some specifics in terms of the industrial area that you have on the east side of town. So one thing we looked at is long-term water supply. Whether it's Vance Air Force Base or whether it's a new agribusiness, water is a big deal. And we're recommending that Enid really transition to a more stable long-term water supply than you have right now. That's going to mean that there's going to be some water distribution issues that'll have to be taken care of to bring that water into where it needs to be used. The sewer collection system needs to be enhanced so that we can provide those businesses, those industries with sewer. We have energy provisions, that would be gas, electric, the street network, and then finally tie in with the multifamily, because the more the more industrial you have, the more drive there's going to be for multifamily housing. So what do some of those things look like? This is just an example. If we bring the water in from Caw Reservoir, which the city is studying right now, locating a treatment plant on the east side of town where it would serve the industrial base, particularly the heavy water users, the ag-related water users on the east side of town, but that water will have to be brought west, because right now Enid's water supply is from west to east. Going to have to turn that around and go east to west. In this industrial area on the east side of town, has to invest in industrial sewers. Fortunately, the sewer treatment plant, which is that yellow dot, it's right here. That yellow dot is on the east side of town, making it very convenient for industries to reach the sanitary sewer. Street network, and we've made some recommendations about primary and secondary industrial streets and the streets, the design of those streets. So that's the big ideas. I want to go into the transportation plan. I know I'm running a little bit long, and I apologize. Go into the transportation plan a little bit. Looked at what this transportation plan needs to be, tie it into the land use, determine what we need to do. Boy, that's an eye chart, isn't it? Sorry about that. Looking at how can we maximize the use by minimizing the amount of land required for highway and street purposes, and provide a thoroughfare improvement program throughout the city. So let's look at the existing conditions. This is your existing land use map. These are the existing roadway travel lanes. We looked at how many lanes are on each street. Then we looked at the functional classification, what streets are classified as arterials, what are collectors, the rest of them are local streets. Looked at their functional classification. We looked at where traffic signals are currently located, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. We looked at the daily volumes. Now, the darker the line here, and this is no surprise to any of you that Garriott and Van Buren have the heaviest traffic. That's represented by the red lines, and further away from there, it dies down. We looked at the intersection. As you would expect, the accidents at these intersections, the most number of them are concentrated on Garriott, and they're concentrated on Van Buren, which of course I don't think would be any surprise to anybody. But when we looked at the accident rate per 1 million entering vehicles, we find that we have some other intersections, particularly up here on Willow, that have a higher accident rate than some of the other intersections on Garriott based on 1 million entering vehicles. So we want to look at the geometry of some of these intersections and see what's going on in those areas. So recommendations, we've recommended roadway capacity improvements on a number of streets. The one street that we've recommended a decrease in the capacity is on Broadway, as it goes from downtown out to the colleges, as we mentioned before. We have brought up another very controversial item. We understand it's controversial. We know it's been brought up before, and that's the use of Randolph as a parallel arterial to Garriott to try to get some of the local traffic off onto Randolph. This would also apply to Willow. But we know that you've tried and failed before on Randolph, and we recommend that you try again to develop Randolph as a parallel arterial for Garriott to carry some of the traffic that Garriott is currently carrying. We've looked at intersection improvements, some of these based on capacity, some of these based upon the new alignment of Randolph and Broadway, and some of it based on the accident experience. We've looked at how can we treat Broadway so that we can have it as a lower volume street and people can use Randolph as the higher volume street. And we've looked at synchronized traffic lights. We believe that on Garriott, Randolph, and Van Buren, those can be integrated into a modern traffic signal system with synchronization to help carry the volume, but also provide gaps in the traffic. We don't want to just carry it, but we also want to provide gaps in the traffic so people that are coming out of neighborhoods and coming out of unsignalized streets have a chance to get on and off the street. So that's an important criteria as well for a synchronized system. We looked at the future land use and zoning. We've looked at this as the land use plan is just a general guide for future growth. We are recommending a slightly different kind of land use plan that you're currently accustomed to. This is the overall land use plan, breaking it up into much broader-based areas. I'll give you a blow-up of that here in a minute. So here we have the kind of land use plan that we're recommending with the density of development shown by the density of the color, the density of development for commercial aspects by the size of the dot. So here's some of the key to this. The centers and destinations, we have neighborhood centers, community centers, and regional destinations. So if you look there, that you see where those neighborhood centers, commercial centers, and the regional destinations are located. The 2 regional destinations on West Garriott and in downtown. We've looked at the land use districts, and we're proposing that we use these land use districts, which we think are a little bit more based on density and use of the area, and there's fewer of them than in your current land use plan. We've recommended that you look at corridors and connectors, arterial connectors, neighborhood corridors, off-street trails, and on-street connectors would be a part of the land use plan. And so when we put all those together, we have a land use plan that we're recommending that looks as is shown here. We've looked at the zoning and subdivision regulations finally. We've looked at creating a new mixed-use zoning district that would apply to the downtown area, incorporating baseline development standards into subdivision regulations, and to create an adequate public facilities ordinance. So those are the 3 areas that we believe Enid would benefit from in the zoning and subdivision regulations. So what changes have been made since the public meeting that we had just a few weeks ago? We have modified the plan language to more appropriately acknowledge Vance Air Force Base important to Enid. We never excluded Vance Air Force Base's importance. It just didn't get into the text as well as it should have. We've added acknowledgement of the stakeholders and people involved in the plan process. We've added the trail connection on the northeast side and one to Vance. We've addressed some of the reasoning and background for the retail analysis. This also applies to the housing analysis with our conversations with your existing providers for that. And then we've looked at, we're in the process of looking at what can we recommend for Woodring Airport in terms of the industrial growth area around Woodring Airport, which accidentally got left out of the plan, and we're looking at how that should have been addressed originally.
Thank you, Carl. Mr. Chairman, it's time for public input.
Okay. Carl, thank you very much for that informative view on the plan. Do we have people that are signed up?
We do. Cindy Grevin, please.
Kind of specific on what I'd like to address. We have a business on East Broadway, 211 East Broadway. Of course, we're all about, building our downtown area. Kind of goes in conjunction with number 2, incorporating residential and business in the downtown. We are ready to pull the trigger on hiring architects and so forth to turn our upstairs to our building into living quarters. However, with the current restriction that you have to have a sprinkler system, makes it cost prohibitive. We've done some checking. It would be approximately $80,000 to do that. Just not worth it. We'll never get it back into the building. I think if you would review that and see about lifting that, I think it's with the fire marshal. But anyway, if that could be lifted or some kind of a concession made so certain exemptions could apply, it would definitely enhance people and motivate them to make those improvements to their buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Trojan.
Hello. Thank you so much for what you do. That's the first thing I want to do. We really appreciate you all taking the time. My husband David and I wrote a letter, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate. We sent it to a lot of people here in the city, and we got responses back from almost every one of the people that we sent the letter to. I have a copy of that if you gentlemen would like a copy of that. I want you to consider one of the first things, and I'm glad that you changed and included Vance Air Force Base and agriculture as our main industries, as with Woodring. Those are extremely important. And I think that it would be really good to talk to some of the people who are here with Vance. I mean, they've lived all different places, and they can tell you what we need here. Restaurants is one of the first things they'll tell you. We need restaurants here. They don't find places to eat. One of the benefits that we have living in Enid is that you can live far northwest and be 10 minutes from downtown. Now, sometimes 412 is busy. It takes a little bit longer, as I found out today, coming here. But, I think it's important to develop downtown. But I think one of the beauties of Enid is that you can go downtown and do lots of things, but you can go back home and have grass and have a parking place inside your garage. And that's one of the things that we like about Enid. I think if you find people that want to live in big cities, they might want to all be just right down there. I don't know how many people here have ever lived in an apartment downtown. Here, I know we have several houses or apartments that are upstairs. I don't know, except of one that's occupied, because people don't want to live there. So that's kind of important, I think. I think that I'm extremely disappointed there aren't more people here. And if this shows how many people have been coming to meetings to talk about this extremely important issue, then we need to make a different plan on how we are getting information on what Enid needs. We need to take this plan to Rotary, to EJRT, or the Enid Regional Development Alliance. We need to take it other places, because if people from Enid are not coming here, I can guarantee you they're talking about it. We've had lots of people come and talk to David and myself about that. So we need to change the way, if we want this to be Enid's plan, we need to take it to Enid. I think that when you're talking about the vacant or underutilized retail space, I don't know that you really take into account that this is a county seat. This is a medical regional hub. Those are not retail. And we need, a lot of those places that you're showing are vacant, or that was your word, and I know you're going to change that some, but they're medical centers. They're used for different business things for the county seat. I think that you need to take in a little more things. I don't believe we have that much retail. We have a lot of organizations that are mentioned that we need to develop. I've served on the Indian Higher Education Council for years and chaired that. The last 2 years, I know I was never talked to about doing this, and I do think that is an organization that does scholarships here in Enid. And what it is it was formed by businessmen and women when we bought the Phillips campus. And it consists of people who are interested in Northwestern, Northern, Autry, downtown, and just the economy in Enid, and how we can make and the high school to make all those work better. So a lot of the organizations and things that are in your proposal are already available. So please, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this. Please take this to the community, and there's a lot of great things. I love the idea of going back and forth to the college campuses. That's wonderful. But there's a lot of redundancy of things that we already have that we need to look at. So thank you very much for your time. Would you gentlemen like a copy of this? Is that okay? Yeah. And I apologize. It is tax season, so I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sure. David gave me one.
Oh, thank you.
I have several.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Chris Trojan.
Enid is a community that is always an improvement. Have we reached where we need to be yet? No. Are we improving every day? Yes. This plan is a step forward, but it's nowhere near what this plan should really be to make Enid what it should be. We are not a Wichita. We are not a Kansas City. We are an Enid, America. It'd be great to have a downtown vibrant with not national chains, but local shops where someone can go and enjoy a true downtown experience. But yet, we need to develop the whole community and not just focus on this one area. Looking at some of the plans that B and I did, they had over 8,000 people or comments, what they said, when they did Greensburg. They had many town halls. Their community was voting on things. We need to work on taking this to our individuals in our community to get the input. I'm glad Carl did a great presentation tonight, helped explain a lot of issues that were not revealed or given topics to on the last meeting. With you saying we have a trade area of 100,000 people, it changes the whole of the secondary market. It changes the whole retail section. Just adding 50% more means we need at least 1 million more square feet of retail. That's just rough numbers, because you need 4.7. That shows we're short 1 million square feet. We have 21% of someone's income is spent on general goods. But some of the numbers of the restaurants are lower. Go look at a restaurant at 5 to 8 o'clock in the evening. They're full. We don't have those buildings to serve that need. That's where we need to work on it. We need to take this to all of our friends and come back and work with this. I also want the city, this is not something that has to be done tomorrow. It's something that can be done within this next year. Even though, as they discussed the last meeting, we're 9 months into this process, our current plan goes to 2025. This is a great blueprint to help build upon what we have. We have a lot of the same plan ideas in our old 2025 plan. To get somebody to want to follow a plan, even though it's a living, vibrant, changing every day, you must have their input into it. I know when I've talked to some of my friends and said, is Garfield County our trade area? I've had no one that says that's correct. Everyone says we have 100 to 150,000 people. I'm not saying that's correct, but we all know people drive an hour to come to Enid to work, shop, but we have ways we need to improve on what they're doing here. The industrial growth, we need to look at economic growth for white-collar individuals. We are not going to be community in Northwest Oklahoma and support economic development if we're only keeping blue-collar individuals here. We need to look at the energy sector. We need to look at how we can get more top-paying jobs here in Garfield County. Otherwise, we'll be just like a Woodward or an Alva trying to hold on to what we have and shrinking.
That's all the people that signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all. Is there anyone else that would like to say anything on this? Go ahead.
One of the things that I noticed on the plan is we did not cover the ACUS districts or any of the accident potential zones out of Vance. And you look at these areas over here, and we have planned growth in these areas from this plan. I've fought the ACUS district for a number of years so far, and that's something that we do need to protect, we do need to look at. And if we can't build in those areas, what other areas can we move the growth to? We do have the strong retail sales on West Garriott. We cannot really expand in that area specifically because it's under the APZ2 district over there. The majority of our retail corridor is in that ACUS district. And some of the things that we looked at earlier on today with the expansion of the apartments into retail, we're having difficulty doing it in those areas just to the sheer amount of traffic in those areas. So are we looking more of retail out on West Garriott or further west, even though it adds to our urban sprawl, but where else do we add this? We have some great neighborhood centers on the north, south, and east side of town. We have the potential for downtown and some of the nodes along Broadway. Those are some great areas, but where are you going to put some of the larger boxes that we're looking at putting into town? Another thing, other than the retail, we have some of the residential issues that are happening. We have some growth going in on the center of town with infill along Chestnut and Cleveland, where it looks like we may have another 70 houses coming into that area and maybe 200 units of apartments coming in the near future, but there is some more infill there. But is all of our growth going to be on the north side of Purdue for residential? Are you looking at the people working downtown, people working at the base? Is the residential going to be going up an additional 3 or 4 miles away from where they work, or 10 to 15 miles away from where they work? Or should we look at something along our existing strip along Garriott, where can we expand further west on Garriott and maybe even south on Garriott for additional housing in that area, where we can have a little bit more affordable area to live for some of our starter homes and some of our medium-priced jobs here in town. So I would look at the area to protect Vance as much as possible. We still need to we still need to be able to expand our retail, because we know, knowing where we can expand, we just don't have spaces available for these people, or they'd be here. And then we also need to be able to expand our residential where it's somewhere where people want to be able to live, close to where actually close to the retail and close to the areas needed. So, thank you.
Okay, I think we've had a number of people that have given us their opinion and a lot of good input on this. Where do we go from here? Is this about it, Chris?
This concludes our hearing this evening. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned.
Yeah, I didn't.
Aimless.